easy insurance payout. Dashcams are becoming more and more popular these days, and we're glad that they are, because they've not only helped decide court cases, but have also given us some absolutely insane videos that you have to see to believe. Vehicle ends up airborne. Carleton Place, Ontario is potentially a very dangerous place to be on the road, especially when this person is behind the wheel. Even without the dashcam footage to alert him, the driver of the vehicle recording this incident knew that something was off, saying that he'd been keeping an eye on the car behind him for quite some time when it was eventually brought to a rather startling halt. Richard Poirier, who lives in Ottawa, was definitely not paying attention at all, and he has since been charged with reckless driving, which seems like a light sentence considering the footage. That being said, he didn't actually end up hurting anyone other than himself. Other than damage to the light pole and his car, there's really not much else to throw the book at him for, although this is definitely a strange case. We can expect that Poirier won't be back behind the wheel of a car anytime soon, and we have to wonder how he got his license at all after watching this particular event unfold. Leading up to the epic crash, he ends up swerving from the shoulder to the middle line on numerous occasions, which doesn't really inspire confidence, and what was prompted the guy with the dashcam footage to keep a close eye on him. He knew something was about to go down, but he didn't know what. And we're sure that the sight of Poirier pulling into the ditch before launching his car into the air like a monster truck wasn't at all what he was expecting. Poirier does look like he's driving drunk, although we don't know for sure, so we can't actually attest to that possibility. After calling the cops and presenting this video evidence to them, the driver of the leading car decided that he just had to post the video online as well, and we're more than happy about his decision to do so. It was posted only a few hours after the footage was captured in early September of 2017. This strange occurrence could have ended up much worse, and we're also pretty glad that nobody was seriously hurt at any point, although the power was cut to the area until crews could make emergency repairs, which would have been annoying to anyone living in the neighborhood. Airplane crash. When an airplane goes down, it's usually a pretty impressive sight, despite the carnage that it usually ends up causing. Plane crashes are no laughing matter, and we can be thankful that they don't happen all that often, with air travel actually being one of the safer ways to get around. We wouldn't want to be in a big metal coffin if something happens to go wrong, and the feeling of helplessness as you careen towards the ground would be absolutely terrifying. Anyone on the ground would also be pretty freaked out, especially if the plane's headed right towards them. With everything happening so fast, there's a good chance that making it to safety is out of the question, with your survival basically up to chance at that point. One driver managed to capture some dashcam footage that we just had to share with you, as it perfectly frames that terrifying moment in every plane crash when all hell finally breaks loose. The plane in this video is quite massive and completely out of control. The drive along the highway goes from business as usual to unbelievable in seconds as the plane dives into view before smashing its right wing on the divider and plunging into the Keelung River below. The plane had just taken off from the Taipei airport and had 58 people on board at the time. The fact that there were survivors at all is being hailed as a testament to the plane's design, and we can agree that the crash definitely looks like something that isn't possible to walk away from, not to mention live through. With the plane half submerged in the water, emergency crews had to use cranes to pull people free from the wreckage, which isn't the most effective strategy. While the crash itself is pretty rough, this footage is absolutely nuts, and we can't believe that someone with a dash cam just happened to be able to capture a clear shot of the moment the plane touched down. Russian meteor footage. Chelyabinsk is now known all over the world, being the site of the super bolide that caused such a fuss back in February of 2013. The meteor, which measured roughly 20 meters across, entered Earth's atmosphere around 3:20 UTC and streaked through the sky at a speed of almost 43,000 miles per hour. The entire thing was captured by dashcams all over the surrounding area, with the devices being so prevalent in Russia. The most interesting thing about most of the videos we see is the lack of any kind of reaction from the drivers. In this video, you can clearly hear the meteor as it makes its way into view and across the sky, with all sorts of traffic sounds in the background. The driver even has his radio on and is pumping tunes. You don't, however, hear the driver say anything at all or react to what he's witnessing in the least, which is strange. We'd be losing our minds and screaming obscenities if we saw something like this, as we became convinced that the sky was falling on top of us. The Russians, however, are tough as nails, and if this can't faze them at all, then we assume nothing can. Maybe this area sees a lot of military testing on a regular basis, and the locals assume that this was more of the same, but such an impressive event should get at least some kind of a shocked reaction. We'd settle for a gasp or even a one-word exclamation, but this driver just doesn't seem to care at all. We couldn't even watch the video without commenting out loud just how awesome and terrifying a meteor entering Earth's atmosphere would be in person. It's not just the noise given off by the meteor that's overwhelming, but also the intense light that it gives off. The space rock basically lights up the sky like a mini sun, making the late afternoon so much brighter than it should be. Making this meteor even more worrisome is the fact that it reached Earth completely under the radar. An asteroid that was previously known about actually passed close to our planet in a near-Earth event a mere 16 hours later, and while the world was watching that giant, this smaller specimen sneaked by and could have easily caused a lot more issues than it did. It was an immense rock, weighing around 13,000 metric tons. Many injuries were reported after this thing exploded at a height of around 30 kilometers up with the force of around 33 times as much as the bomb that was detonated over Hiroshima in 1945, but nobody was killed. If this had happened in the middle of a larger city, then we can be sure that it would have caused pretty widespread devastation. Gas explosions. In 2014, Kaohsiung, Taiwan was rocked by a string of gas explosions that left 32 people dead and a further 321 people seriously injured. The explosions were fairly numerous, with some sources claiming that there were 5 in total, and all of them had very little prior warning. Police had reported around 3 hours earlier that they could smell gas in the area, and some had seen white smoke coming out of manhole covers. These reports weren't taken all that seriously, and people thought nothing more of it, until the situation finally became a serious public safety issue. Some of the explosions saw smoke and flames shooting up to 15 stories high, which is absolutely nuts. The event cut gas lines to around 23,000 homes, with electricity and water being affected for many people as well. This video shows the more active explosions as these guys drive around the danger zone, trying desperately to get the hell out of there. That's easier said than done when gas lines are blowing up all around you, tearing up the road and basically creating a scene that resembles a war zone. When this particular dashcam video sees the first explosions happen, one motorcyclist ends up being halfway through the intersection. His reaction is pure gold, as they immediately pull a U-turn and go right back the way they came. We'd do the same, with that night out being a bust before it even started. He levels out and hits the gas as the entire block begins to erupt into flames, brightening the street much like the Chelyabinsk meteor, albeit on a much smaller scale. We wouldn't want to be on a bike that night, and even being in a car would be enough to turn us into a whimpering mess. After the first explosion, the guys in the car take a left, following the biker, but are stopped short when a pillar of flames shoots through the road in front of them, making it clear that their escape route is still pretty damn dangerous. They finally leave the area and drive off, lucky to escape with their lives. Rescue workers who arrived on the scene were unable to put the fires out, having to wait until they burned themselves out. The water simply didn't work and actually made things worse in some cases. It turns out the entire event was preceded by a propane leak, with a petrochemical company in the city taking a lot of heat for not maintaining their pipes properly. The pipes hadn't been inspected in almost 24 years after being installed way back in 1994 and ignored since then. Boulders raining from above. When tropical storms bring heavy rains, the chances of being caught by falling boulders being washed off the sides of steep hills are increased exponentially, especially in areas that are already susceptible to rock slides. That was the case in Keelung City, Taiwan, when a recent storm caused a massive boulder to shake itself loose and deposit itself with incredible fanfare almost directly on top of one unlucky motorist. The video was taken with a dashcam and shows the entire event from the perspective of the trailing car. The boulder is preceded by a torrent of mud and water washing down over the road and partially obscuring it from view. The boulder then pops up, seemingly out of nowhere, and drops on top of the sedan that happens to be caught in its path. Nobody was killed by this near miss, and the area was cleaned up relatively quickly, although they were still reeling from the previous disaster, with Tropical Storm Kang Ray taking the lives of 3 people and destroying all sorts of property. The McDonald's that's featured in the video was closed after this boulder touched down and remained closed for quite some time. After the boulder finally comes to a stop, everything's actually surprisingly peaceful, and we were just happy to see that the driver of the sedan was able to get out and walk around, although we can't confirm if anyone in the backseat was injured at all. Russian Yeti sighting. We like to stay skeptical about most footage regarding cryptid sightings, but this Yeti sighting in Russia is much better than most we've seen, and it's really given us pause right now. This video's been making the rounds lately and shows a group of Russians packed into a car while driving down a back road at night. There's a healthy layer of fresh powder on the ground, and the road's fairly narrow. The group can't see too far ahead of them and are only able to see the area illuminated by the car's headlights, which don't penetrate too far into the gloom. Even so, they managed to catch a glimpse of something pretty freaky that gets them all excited. After watching Russian dashcam footage of the relatively recent meteor explosion in which nobody seems to react at all, it's clear that Russians are hard as nails and that it takes a lot to get them excited. That's why this video is so intriguing. Some people have said that their reactions are nothing more than putting on a show, claiming the video's been hoaxed. We've seen plenty of hoax videos in our day, and if this is one of them, then the quality's exceptional and definitely out of the ordinary. The creature seen looks Hobbit oversized and covered in light brown fur from head to toe. As it runs across the road, you can see Powder getting kicked up by its feet, and that's what really sets this video apart from the rest. Most hoaxes involve simply pasting a creature on top of existing footage, but they don't do much to set the scene or make it seem real. That being the case, if this is a fake video, the editor or editors ended up putting in a ton of solid work, and even that deserves a little recognition. Still, we think that this video has a lot of weight behind it and are more than willing to believe it's the real deal. After the creature darts across their path, the group stop the car and go nuts talking about what they just saw, trying to work their heads around it. After a brief stop, they continue on their way, trying to keep an eye out for the creature they spotted earlier. They stop once again after realizing they passed it by, and it's unfortunate that they weren't able to get a better look at whatever that was. After backing up a bit, it's clear that whatever that thing was ended up booking it and hiding out right off the bat. We're sure the little guy was just as spooked as the group in the car was, and we bet it didn't stick around to see if they were friendly or not, which is probably a safe bet on its part. Russian ridiculousness. The next creature caught on Dashcam also comes out of Russia, but is definitely a little less apt to be real. We figured we'd highlight it and let you decide for yourself, as plenty of people seem to think that this event actually happened. Despite their convictions, we're not all that convinced of this video's legitimacy when all's said and done. It's definitely not at the same professional level as our first video, but still worth a quick review. It begins with a car driving down a city street when all hell breaks loose out of absolutely nowhere. After a little bit of boring footage, a loud rumbling sound fills the air for a few seconds, signaling that something epic is about to go down. The rest of the video certainly doesn't disappoint if you're hoping for something out of this world, and not long after the rumbling starts up, the car with the dashcam is forced to make an abrupt stop as the road cracks wide open only a few feet from the front of the car. The car directly behind and to the left of the one taking the video, however, isn't quite so lucky. It ends up continuing without braking in time and ends up right on top of the split in the road. It gets bounced around and comes to a stop, balancing on the uneven surface. That's when the real star of the video makes its startling appearance. A massive, dark, winged creature bursts forth from the fresh opening in the ground, leaping to the surface and landing heavily on the road directly in front of the dashcam like a literal bat out of hell. It then leaps wildly into the air, roaring as it does so, only to land directly in front of the camera, revealing itself to the world. It then jumps back up into the air and disappears into the sky as the footage suddenly cuts out. While we don't doubt the validity of the beginning of the video, the part where the road buckles and the pavement explodes outwards, the rest is probably a little over the top. To begin with, an event like this would have raised the attention of more than a single YouTuber, and we would expect it would prompt news organizations across the world getting in on the action. The fact that they've been silent is the first sign that this creature didn't actually present itself in such an impressive fashion, and is merely the product of basic editing. A quick search will also make it clear that the road did in fact buckle like the video shows, causing quite a lot of damage in the process. Funnily enough, the creature wasn't mentioned in any of those stories, so we're calling BS for now. Still, it would be amazing to hear that something like this actually happened, and if anyone's able to offer more concrete proof that it's real, we'd appreciate it, and welcome you to give us a heads up and state your case in the comment section. Evil spirit chases car. You may have seen this video before, as it's been in circulation for quite a while now. It's clear that the driver was definitely scared half to death by this strange encounter. It all starts when they come across a figure on the road that looks a lot like an old woman with a cane. She seems to be having some trouble crossing the road, so the driver stops in front of her and flashes his lights to get her attention and see if they can help. The flash helps illuminate her a little better, and at that point, we're treated to a terrifying-looking hunchback that looks more like the creepy girl in Ringu. This is when the driver realizes he's dealing with something odd. The woman then begins to shuffle towards the car, looking quite determined to reach it. At the same time, the driver loses his cool completely, yelling at a passenger to lock the doors immediately. The woman continues to push towards the car, getting steadily closer, and the driver decides to punch it in reverse and get the hell out of there. As the car moves away from the woman, she stops dead in her tracks, but continues to stare. During this time, the driver begins screaming in terror again, and the video ends as he tears out of there, fearful for his life. We're sure that wasn't just any old lady, and we think that it's a good call the driver pieced out without trying to help, as that probably would have ended up being the last thing he ever did. Utah police capture cryptid on camera. This footage comes straight out of Utah and was posted by police officers after they realized they'd captured a very strange creature on their traffic camera. Not quite a dash cam, but close enough in our books. The traffic cam seems to show a humanoid creature wandering across the street at night. The image is blurry and it's hard to make out definite shapes, but we're much more willing to believe that something strange is going on, considering the image's source isn't just some random YouTuber or a group of kids. It was posted by a bunch of cops who probably have better things to do than perpetrate hoaxes online. It could be that they just had a slow day at work, but we're still leaning towards their creature being real. We only have still images from the traffic cam, but they're still enough to pique our interest. Skeptics have stated that this creature could just be a blurry branch, but we think it's worth doing a deeper dive, and considering the idea that a police department in Utah actually did manage to show us something the world has never seen before. The fact that they were weirded out enough to reveal their find to the general public speaks volumes, and we'd love to be able to get to the bottom of this and do a little detective work ourselves. Big Cat of St. Albans. The Big Cat of St. Albans has been something of an urban legend for quite some time, but this dashcam footage is helping to catapult it from the realm of the unbelievable and has made potential believers out of us, which is definitely saying something. The driver pulled to the side of the road to get a better view, and surprisingly, the cat doesn't seem to be bothered by his presence, at least to begin with. It seems that the possible real-life cryptid was hunched over next to a deer carcass, happily filling its belly. The driver decides to inch closer after watching the cat for a few seconds, which is when the creature seems to take better notice of him. It then decides that it's had enough and begins to back away, still taking its time as it does so. It then walks purposefully into the woods and disappears from view. Nobody would have believed this story if we didn't have the footage to back it up, but it's hard to argue with this video, which is obviously legitimate. The driver hovers around for a little while longer, backing up again to get a good view as the cat wanders off, giving the world a perfect look at what could very well be a lesser-known cryptid, at least outside of that immediate area. The Big Cat of St. Albans has been suspected of leaving a trail of bloody bodies as it prowls the area, and it's stumped plenty of believers around the world. After this video was uploaded, many experts insisted that it had to be a puma, but others aren't quite so quick to agree, saying that the Big Cat of St. Albans is so much more than a puma, and that this footage doesn't conclusively show a puma at all. The Big Cat of St. Albans has maintained its legend for quite some time, but the jig may be up at this point. While many are convinced, however, that this footage does show the Big Cat of St. Albans, this particular specimen does seem smallish based on previous accounts, which claim that the cat has to be much larger and more intimidating, being less akin to a puma and more like a panther in appearance. We can't say for sure, but with all the attention this video's earned, we figure it's definitely worth taking into consideration.